Well, a hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here. Glad you're joining me. We together are taking a look at the book as we're walking through the Pentateuch, the Torah. We're doing it the way Jewish folk do it. It's carved up in reading sections. And this week is Parashat Pinchas. And let me tell you, this is an odd one. It starts in chapter 25, verse 10, and bleeds over to chapter 30, verse 1. It's the beginning of the story, the namesake of the story, that really gets my attention, Pinchas. In order to understand the story, we need to get the backdrop to it, and that's the very tail end of last week's Torah portion. The children of Israel have finished the wilderness trek, and they're about ready to enter into Canaan. Realizing that he was unable to beat the Hebrews militarily, because he knew that he couldn't send his young men against, that is I'm talking about Balak, the king of the east, realized he couldn't send his young men against the Israelite men. He decided to send his young women. Realizing that God wouldn't turn away from the Hebrews, the question is, can we get the Hebrews to turn away from God? And by virtue of their so doing, God would withdraw his protection from them. And the ploy was send the girls. The girls went forth and seduced. And the net result is they, through subtlety, time, and circumstance, swayed the men away from Jehovah. That was a problem. Over 20,000 were executed as a result of it. Now, the way this was stopped, there was a fella named Pinchas. When the Hebrews were mourning these various deaths, there was one man that had such chutzpah that he, indifferent to what was going on around him and the judgment being imposed upon others, thinking that he was an elite from a high placed in a tribe and, part of the bourgeois, he doesn't care. He gets himself a Midianite princess and goes into the camp and does what people do sometimes when they go behind closed doors. Well, Pinchas, our story today plays out against that backdrop with Pinchas responding. I want to get to it in the 25th chapter, but let me begin by harking to a story I had once when I was teaching this as an on-ground class. On ground, here I am coming to you vis-a-vis the internet. It's not really my forte. I've had my career as an instructor, not doing internet instruction, but face-to-face. A student in a Pentateuch class we were musing once, and he was just sharing frustrations he had, and he asked me the question, Dr. Seif, how can I launch my ministry? Well, very candidly, I said, what you need to do is find a couple who are fornicating and go to the hotel room that they've secured for their time together, kick down the door, and before you do that, grab a spear, and after you kick down the door, go in there and make sure they're on top of each other, and then just drive the spear through them, both of them with one stroke. He looked at me aghast. He said, Professor Seif, really, it's not the kind of answer I expected from you, in response to which I said, well, it worked for Pinchas. I mentioned that because Pinchas, we're told, in chapter 25, verse 7, when he saw what was happening, he rose from the midst of the assembly, took a spear in his hand, and went after the man of Israel into the tent and pierced them through, both the Israelite man and the woman's belly. Then the plague among Bnei Israel was stopped. However, 24,000 were dead because of the plague. Well, it worked for him. Well, of course, he was taken back by that, and I really said it for effect. I don't recommend, aspiring ministers take spears and go slay people. But it's interesting here that it happened, and it begs the question, what might a takeaway from this be? The answer to that question unfolds as you read further and discover in verse 10, and here's where we're getting into Parashat Pinchas. Adonai, the Lord, spoke to Moses, saying, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the Kohen, or the priest, has turned away my anger from Bnei Israel, from the sons of Israel, because he was very zealous for me among them, so that I did not put an end to Bnei Israel in my zeal. So now say, see, I am making with him a covenant of shalom, a covenant of peace. It will be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for his God and atoned for Bnei Israel. Very interesting. According to the text, the good Lord looks at this man and says, you know what? That's what I'm talking about. I definitely appreciate that enthusiasm, so much so that as a result of this act, I want this man to be the high priest, and not only him, but his sons in perpetuity. And of course, the tacit inference is that this story will then ensure a telling dor lador from generation to generation. And except for a brief hiatus, it is, as it says, that the sons of Pinchas enjoyed the high priesthood right up until the destruction of the temple. Now, what can we learn from this, if anything? Well, of course, when it comes to strict scripture, we all have our takeaways. It's the enthusiasm that is noted here, that we're not going around killing people. There was a death sentence meted out. Over 20,000 people were already served notice, if you will. I smirk with that. I'm not trying to be snarky. Pinchas was doing what was already mandated. He didn't just unilaterally decide to go swing a machete and kill someone or swing a spear or whatever. That he was just zealous for God, for his name, for his honor, to stave off this assault against the sons of Israel. This kind of enthusiasm needs to be remembered, because it's the stuff of faith life. It's the stuff of religious life. Well, for that matter, it's the stuff of life. It takes enthusiasm. It takes a kind of dogged determination, it seems to me, to accomplish anything in life. Humanly speaking, if someone wants to be a medical doctor, the determination it takes to get through college and medical school and residency in order to get there. To be a lawyer, what it takes to get to it and through it all. To be a plumber, to go through the process of being an apprentice and getting to it and all the, to be an electrician, all the attics you have to climb through. To be a certified HVAC, air conditioning, heater, repairman, all the stuff you have to go through. There's work that we need to get to goals, and you just have to love the vocation a little more than others do in order to endure what it takes to get it done. Simple as that. I mean, it's true in the natural. They call me Professor Seif. Well, I had to endure a lot of classes, a lot of book reading, a lot of term papers and tests in order to get to and through where I could be privileged to be able to be a teacher. I had to be taught, and I had to suffer with it. It took more zeal than the average person. I often tell students, the reason why I'm standing here teaching and you're sitting there, it's not that I'm better than you, it's that I sat where you sat longer than you're sitting. Simple as that. It's a certain kind of zeal that propels you through. And that's what it takes to get the job done. You have to endure the bad seasons, and you have to enjoy the good seasons and go through it all and keep that verve and vitality up, that zeal. Remember, Pinchas was commended for his zeal. And I hope that by virtue of you walking with me to and through Pinchas today, that you're reminded to stir up that fire within you. Sometimes you have to put a poker on the fire and let it get stirred up a little bit, and I hope I did that. Well, blessings to you, and thank you for coming with me and we here at the Tree of Life Bible World. We're all about the Word, and we're all about serving you. God bless. Jeffrey Seif. Same time, same station. I will see you next week.